Okay. During the next period of time, we have asked various landowners. Excuse me. Maybe you can close the doors if they. Thank you. We've asked various landowners to come up and share with efforts that they've made, particularly some of them that haven't been involved with any of the RCD or NOAA or any other programs, just on their own. So we have several cards here. Hang on just a second. And there may be some of the rest of you whom we had called and asked if you'd be interested. Greg, did you come prepared to give your...
Oh, wait.
Hang on just a minute. Is that he later?
Yeah, it's public comment period.
No. I'm talking about Greg Laurie.
No, I'm
You didn't do that. Okay. All right. All right. I think we're going to start with Mike Duguay, who is the first one to give me a...
we have the county also on the agenda.
Whoops, am I getting way out of my help? I'm so sorry. I thought it said... No, I'm next. You're next.
You're next. Is that when we're doing the public comment card?
No. Well, for the ranchers. These are the ranchers that made up the cards.
It's your spot on the agenda. Handle that.
Now, Brian, I know what I'm doing. Okay.
I'll defer.
Okay. I've asked Mike Duguay to come up because he's worked with us for a long time. Mike and I work on the Etna City Council together. And then after that, I'm going to ask John Mackey. And John, you have to be brief because other people want to talk. And then Nancy Carver. Now, Nancy, are you talking about what you've done on your ranch, or are you making another kind of comment? Talking about your ranch, what you've done? Good, thank you. And then also Jim Morris is going to be talking. If there's others, I know we had talked to several others who said they were interested. Let me know as this goes on. Okay, Mike, you're on. You want to use that, Mike?
I didn't think I'd end up going right after the RCD, so Marilyn asked that I be nice. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a consulting forester. My wife is 4th generation Scott Valley native. My children are 5th generation. Local ranchers, farmers, and timberland owners, as well as large timber companies. Over my career, I have written and supervised over 70 timber harvest plans, totaling in the tens of thousands of acres, primarily north of Redding. Today I wanted to talk about what I've done in the Scott River Watershed. Since 1995, I've written 16 timber harvest plans covering 3,200 acres of small private timberland in Scott River Watershed. This comprised 20 separate owners, of which only one was industrial. I did a couple of plans for fruit growers. Of the 3,200 acres I laid out, 98% were thinning or continuous forest canopy, meaning only 2% of what I laid out was clear cutting. So what has been accomplished by this? Well, prior to logging under these plans, these parcels were dense, stagnating thickets of trees that were at risk of catastrophic wildfire. After logging, stands of well-spaced trees remained, and the fire danger was reduced markedly. In terms of impacts to surface water, there was 2 positive things that were achieved. Transpiration rates, which is how much water the trees suck out of the ground, were obviously reduced, and we fixed 14 stream diversions. Now, reducing transpiration is a big deal in our area, seeing we only get about 20 or 30 inches of rain a year, depending on where you are on the slope. My in-laws have family pictures of this area dating back to the 1930s. The regrowth of the forested slopes here in Scott Valley is dramatic. When I work for old-time families, they talk about springs that used to run year-round but have now dried up due to the increased numbers of trees. After thinning these areas, the springs are starting to flow again, and stream flow has increased. Most of the lands in this watershed have been logged at least twice. Some of them have been logged 4 times since the 1850s. You're figuring the mining at 1850, the boom of the 1920s, the post-logging boom of the 1950s, and then the re-entering in the 70s and 80s. So there's your 4 cycles, all of it selection. Now, most of the times I'm the first forester that has been back to these forests since they were last logged in the 50s and 60s. And being the first guy in after 50 years means I got to figure out how to fix stuff, how to fix eroded roads and blown out stream crossings. And I don't have an exact number of how many tons of sediment that I've eliminated personally from going into the river with the aid of the landowners. But I can tell you that I fixed 14 stream diversions, and most of them had been bleeding sediment for over 50 years. The landowners who employed me upgraded well over 150 miles of road and stopping sediment that was bleeding in for decades. None of this work was done with government grants. It was paid for by the timber that we harvested. And I really wish I could report to you that I'm still working with landowners to help attain the sediment reduction targets in the Scott River TMDL Action Plan. But you see, since the salmon protection rules went in and the water quality rules went in around 2000, timber harvesting on small ownerships in the watershed has virtually stopped. With no logging, there's no fixing of the old stream diversions, so the sediment continues to bleed. This problem is not just with small landowners. It's everywhere in the watershed. For example, I found a stream diversion on an old logging road on Paynes Lake Creek, which is a branch of French Creek. It's on Forest Service land, Section 12, Township 40 North, Range 10 West. It's now the Russian wilderness, so I don't think we can get an excavator up there to pull the old culvert. Who's going to fix that? It's bleeding sediment, has been for 40 years. If we can't economically harvest trees to pay for the restoration work, how will the sediment reduction targets be met? According to the TMDL Action Plan, sediment from road cut, fill failures, and crossing failures are supposed to be reduced by 70%. It's a big number. At this point, I don't see this happening on the Forest Service lands or the small ownerships at all. Even the large companies are having a hard time getting economical permits. Like other foresters and landowners, when we lay out a logging job, we take pride in making things better than we found them. We want to improve fish habitat for our kids. It's the right thing to do. But I can't make things better if I'm not working. Given the virtual shutdown of my profession, it is the agencies, which in my opinion are the biggest obstacle to improving water quality in this watershed. One-size-fits-all regulation is not working, especially in my profession. They've got one size of regulatory for the coastal watersheds. Of course, we're much drier in the inland watersheds. And in meeting with board staff last night, I asked, where is the regulatory flexibility for pilot projects where landowners can test new methods? People who are secure in their property rights have every incentive to innovate. It is their land. Private landowners do a better job of caring for habitat than government. We can do it for less money, and we can make a profit in the process. My experience as a professional forester for the last 20 years is that private landowners take care of their land. They produce economic goods that society wants, and they provide the tax base that supports us all, even the agencies. The solutions we seek cannot come from the government. They must come from the people who own the land. Now, I wanted to share the solutions that I showed with board staff. Water quality should back pilot projects that are designed to measure changes in stream flow due to vegetation management. This is, we could take a watershed, put a stream gauge in it, harvest some of the trees, and see how much more water comes out of it. A board finding from the board itself supporting this could then be used by the Forest Service and private landowners in their environmental documents, which would help them get it through easier. The pilot projects need regulatory flexibility, and I've asked board staff to give me a list of what specific laws we can't, they need to be changed, that we would have to go to our legislators, that would prevent small pilot projects from excessive review and delay in permitting. Because in my opinion, without pilot projects, land management right now is stagnating. We are not moving forward as a society. Everybody's scared to do anything. And I've asked board staff if they could modify the waiver to include an exemption for small timber landowners. I believe that if you own less than 2,500 acres, You should be exempt from the erosion control plans, but I do believe that the rest of the stuff is attainable for the small guys. It's the paperwork that's killing us. And my main point, there's not enough money, folks, to fix this with grant money. There's just no way to fix all of it. The private sector has to use a for-profit approach in order to get the restoration done. So, for example, if they're looking for deep holes in the main stem, rather than put a government contract out, what we need is a small pilot project where we give the gravel or the gold to a small commercial mining outfit, let them dig some deep holes in the river, and then monitor and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I respect Mike a lot. We don't always agree even on city council, but I really respect him and I like working with him a lot.